Now, as the year is coming to an end, so seems my voice, but as always we'll power through and hope you don't mind too much. Now, what we have here in front of us is what I would call a potential Harper Wings killer, at least in scale 200, and why I think this could be we'll find out throughout this review, which once more has been made possible thanks to the great prices of the F&B shop. And with that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at an Airbus A330-300 of Discover Airlines. At the front of the box we have a cutout so we can get a glimpse of the aircraft model inside, and we also have the Discover Airlines branding. The backside of the box, not a massive revelation, but once more we have the Discover Airlines branding. We can see this is a model made by Limox Wings, another German brand making aircraft models, but perhaps not quite as known as Harper Wings. We have the Discover Airlines branding, and we can see this is an officially licensed product. And finally we find the original dimensions of the aircraft. So let's look inside and see what the aircraft model has to offer. Now, as you might already have glimpsed from looking at the front of the box, this aircraft model is not already assembled, which means you need to do it yourself, basically like any snap-fit model from Harper Wings or any other brand. Now, unlike Harper Wings scale 500 models, which often also come completely disassembled, here it is on purpose, but in order to assure that all parts are undamaged, they have been placed in small plastic bags. Of course, this does not mean that there could never be any damage with a Limox Wings model, and full disclosure, this is the very first Limox model I have in my collection, so I don't really have a huge amount of experience to look back at and, well, determining what the overall quality of their products is. But this seems rather solid. The assembly process is as easy as can be. You simply slot the parts into, well, the correct places, and honestly speaking, anyone can figure this out. If you have ever seen an aircraft, you will know where the parts are going. The only place where I would be a little bit more careful is when applying the engines to the engine holder of the wing, because that part can be a little bit more fragile, and if applying too much force, this could break. But you would definitely have to apply quite a bit of force in order to achieve this. Now, usually with these kind of snap-fit models, what you would do is you assemble the aircraft model, then you place it wherever you want to display the aircraft model, and then you never touch it again, basically. In theory, you could of course assemble and disassemble the aircraft multiple times and store it in its original packaging. Now, I can't say what the longevity of this would be if you assemble and disassemble the aircraft multiple times, so basically if the parts are still fitting tightly into the fuselage, but honestly, I would simply assemble it once, display it where you're happy with it, and then leave it be. Now, before we get any further into today's review, I want to mention that this aircraft model, of course, also comes with a stand that also has a little print applied on it. So here she is, the now fully assembled Airbus A330-300 of Discover Airlines in their new standard livery. The airline, of course, recently was rebranded from Eurowings Discover to now Discover Airlines and got this new standard livery in that process. Now, one thing I would like to mention before we take a closer look at all the different details the aircraft model has to offer is the fact that Limox Wings aircraft models are made entirely out of plastic. This is important to notice when we want to compare it with high quality scale 200 aircraft models from like JC Wings or Inflight 200 and Harper Wings premium scale 200 models or their snap-fit models, but more on that a little bit later in the video. First, let's just focus on the aircraft model itself to see what it has to offer. Now, on the tail section we have the new Discover Airlines color scheme. On the fuselage we then have a few prints, like for example the full registration code of the aircraft, the German flag and the flag of the European Union. Underneath that it says member of Lufthansa Group, and do also notice we have a little bit of printed detailing at the cabin doors. Some physical detailing we can then also find at the very tail of the aircraft in form of the APU exhaust. Now, if we move to the front of the aircraft, we can see across the fuselage the Discover Airlines branding. We of course also have a few static ports and hatches printed on. That is quite lovely, and again some detailing in the cabin doors. But let's move on from the side of the aircraft to the cockpit section itself. Now, here we don't get a massive amount of printed details. There could be just a few more things like, the radome could be indicated in print. We could have some pedo tubes, but it's not a lot missing. Something odd, however, that is definitely missing are the window wipers. The little line you see here is a reflection of the lights, and I think this is a big miss for a Scale 200 model not to have any window wipers applied in the print. But the cockpit windows itself and the black mask around that, Limox Wings has pulled off quite nicely in my opinion. But let's move on to the engine nacelles. Now, they have been kept in all white, just as most of the fuselage, but do have the silver leading edge printed on. However, this is the only printed detail we will find here, and that for me is a bit of a disappointment. Some hatches, some safety markings I think would have been a minimum that should have been applied here. But the physical detailing overall is quite okay here from the backside, but quite lovely in front, where we can see the engine fan blades. Now, from the engines we should move on to the wings, starting off with the top side, where we can see the different flaps, slats and spoilers have been carved out actually quite nicely. We also have the marking as to where to walk on the wing and even specified in writing, so that's quite lovely as well. The underside of the wings offers more nice physical detailing, and the A330 of course has these winglets, which I think Limox Wings has pulled off quite alright, especially also here on the inner side, where we very nicely can see the Discover Airlines color scheme printed on. Now, where it gets quite interesting and where Limox Wings differs from Harper Wings snap-fit models is the fact that this aircraft model does have landing gear. This is mainly made out of plastic, but as you can see, a few parts like the wheel caps are made out of metal, and the landing gear is rolling if you like this kind of thing. The front landing gear I think overall looks also quite lovely, but I think a big miss for Scale 200 model is the fact that we have no printed details here. On the belly of the aircraft we then, apart from the Limox Wings branding, find two holes in the fuselage. Now, the rectangular one, that is for the stand. The circular one does not appear to have any function whatsoever, so I think this is a leftover from the production process. Not that nice looking, but as it is on the belly of the aircraft, you will hardly notice it. And then finally, we of course also have the doors to the cargo compartments, again with some lovely printed details here at the back of the aircraft, and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Airbus A330-300 in the current standard livery of Discover Airlines from Limox Wings in Scale 200. And what can we say about this aircraft model? Now, I opened this video by saying that this could potentially be a Harper Wings killer in Scale 200. And let me explain why I think so. Now, obviously, this aircraft model can hardly compete with the premium products in Scale 200, like from JC Wings or In-Flight 200, but these aircraft models usually also, well, price range somewhere between 100 and 200 euros or even above. Now, in order for this aircraft model to compete with that, it would of course have to be made entirely out of metal, need many more printed details and also physical details like antennas and stuff like that. And it doesn't have that, but it doesn't need to have it, because the price range of this aircraft model is a completely different one. Now, Harper Wings has two product ranges in Scale 200. They have their, well, normal Scale 200 aircraft models, where narrow bodies by now have been switched to being entirely out of metal, which is a good thing, but their wide bodies are still pretty much all made out of plastic, and thereby competing with models like this one. The other product range from Harper Wings and Scale 200 are their snap-fit models, so also again a competition to this one, but they do not have landing gear and by no means have more printed details than we see on this aircraft model. Now, my goal for 2024 is to make a more in-depth video about this topic, so do keep an eye out for that. But let me just tell you this for now. Now, when buying a Scale 200 model, you could go for the premium product from JC Wings or In-Flight 200 and pay 100 to 200 euros or above. Or you could buy a Harper Wings wide-body Scale 200 model and pay maybe around 100 euros, but it would be made entirely out of plastic and not look much different what you have here. The alternative would be to get a Harper Wings wide-body snap-fit model, which often retails around 20 to 30, maybe 40 euros. Now, this aircraft model retails at around 50 to 55 euros, but often with discounts, which means you could get this aircraft model in the price range between 30 and 40 euros. So in reality, what we have here is a Scale 200 wide-body aircraft that is marginally more expensive than Harper's snap-fit range, but half the price of what you would pay for a Scale 200 model from Harper Wings that is not snap-fit. and perhaps a quarter of what the premium products are costing. So if you're not willing to splash the cash on those premium Scale 200 models, then I think this is a very solid alternative and definitely has the potential to be a Harper Wings killer. Now with that, we have reached the end of the final episode of Review in 2023. Thank you so much for your support throughout the entire year. I hope you have enjoyed the reviews we have published so far. There are many more coming in the new year. I'd like to wish you a happy new year. Take care of yourself. See you on the other side. And with that, for the last time in 2023, I'm checking out and bye.